When I think of risk, I separate that from ethics, and I often think of risk in two ways. It's safety and it's legal. You've represented a lot of different people, a lot of different organizations. What do you see as the kind of biggest pitfalls that people step into, risk-wise?
That's a hard question to answer simply because you're right. The risk arises in very distinct areas, which is physical safety in producing a film. Risks arise, legal risks that arise from the act of production. If you're going to secretly film in a prison, for example, there are risks related to that part of the production. And then there are the risks that arise from the content once it's distributed, and the pitfalls are very different in each of those areas. But you said for a moment ago putting risk in a box. For those of you who are graphically or mathematically oriented and like X and Y axes, all of these questions about managing risk reduce to exactly two questions, each of which is one word. So there are two words that explain it all. What and where. And if you're mathematically inclined, you can put them on an axis and find out which box of risk you fall into for any one of those three areas of risk. The what risk runs, of course, from low risk to high risk, and the where we'll put on the vertical axis. And to give you an example, if you're doing a film about the mating habits of butterflies, and you're filming it in Manhattan, so that's the what and the where, mating habits of butterflies and in Manhattan. If the film is strictly about the mating habits of butterflies, you're on the low end of risk in all three of those areas as regards the what, all right? There are not very many likely plaintiffs, and butterflies mating out in a field, not too many physical risks associated with filming them. And if you're doing it in Manhattan, which in probably all of the world, and with only one little exception, is the most legally friendly place for journalists or filmmakers to operate, both your what and your where put you down in the far safe corner of the box. But if, in the course of explaining the mating habits of butterflies, you intend to mention that the furniture manufacturer up the Hudson River is illegally dumping toxic chemicals, and this is decreasing the butterfly population, you just made an accusation of criminal wrongdoing, and you have zipped all the way to the far end of the risk on what, because allegations of criminal wrongdoing are perhaps the most dangerous. And if you then decide that you're going to do this film about butterflies who mate on the east coast of Africa, you've just gone up on the where risk as well, because that is not as friendly a place either for security reasons or for legal protections to be. And although it's obviously very subjective, you really can chart risk in that way. It's the way in-house legal counsel at distributors analyze risk in films that you're making when they determine whether to fund or purchase distribution rights. It's the way insurance carriers look at it when they're evaluating whether and on what terms to insure a particular film. That wasn't the question you asked me, but in each of those areas there are particular pitfalls. In terms of producing the film, and this is an important thing to remember, which folks, even lawyers, tend to forget, a legal claim can arise strictly on the basis of what you do while filming, all apart from any distribution. You might never finish the film, you might never distribute it, but a legal claim, risk, can arise from the act of, for example, trespassing with a camera.
Right.
Nothing ever needs to be broadcast. There's obviously legal risk associated with broadcast as well, which comes from the content. And you have to analyze that risk at each step of the way. And as we talk about other examples, I can get into more specifics, but that's the overall context for risk.